It's almost October.
Good evening. Let's call this meeting to order. It's September 23rd, 2010. The time is 7:01. Roll call, please.
Schrader. Smucker.
Here.
Wysocki.
Here.
Ammons. Anderson.
Here.
Beckett.
Here.
Benzel. Betts.
Here.
Carter. Cowart. Dennitz. Gladney.
Present.
James.
Here.
Jay.
Here.
Jones.
Here.
Knott.
Here.
Kurtz.
Here.
Langenheim. McGinty.
Here.
Michaels. Mosher. Nudo.
Here.
O'Connor.
Here.
Richards.
Here.
Rosales.
Here.
Sapp. Weibel.
Here, we have a quorum. Ms. Carol Ammons informed me she cannot make it tonight because of family sickness, and Mr. Langenheim is out in California celebrating his daughter's 25th wedding anniversary. Tonight's prayer is by Mr. Gladney.
Thank you, Chair Weibel. This is actually not my own words. They're from the last few lines of Middlemarch by George Eliot. They've always stuck with me, though. For the growing good of the world is partly dependent on unhistoric acts, and that things are not so ill with you and me as they might have been is half owing to the number who lived faithfully a hidden life and rest in unvisited tombs.
Thank you. Pledge of Allegiance. Would the clerk read the notice of the meeting, please?
Notice is hereby given that a regular meeting of the County Board, Champaign County, Illinois, will convene on September 23rd, 2010, 7 p.m. in the Wild Shields Meeting Room, Brookins Administrative Center, 1776 East Washington Street, Urbana, Illinois, in said county for the purpose of allowing and ordering payments of claims against the county, receiving and acting upon reports of committees and such other matters as may be brought before said meeting, which said meeting shall continue in session from day to day until the completion of said business.
Move adoption.
Moved by Mr. Betts.
Second.
Second by Mr. Rosales. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Seek approval of the agenda and the addenda.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. James, second by Mr. Carter. Discussion. Mr. McGinty.
I'd like to ask unanimous consent on removing item number 6 under Finance from the agenda, revisit it at the next committee of the whole. New information has come up that may give us an opportunity to see greater savings in the future with this particular line item. So I'd like to have it removed from tonight's agenda.
Would it be better just maybe to have keep it on agenda and
Give him unanimous consent. That's exactly what's happening.
Okay, well, I guess we can do that. Is there a second by Mr.? No, yeah. Does anybody object? No objection? Okay, we'll take off number 6.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Okay, all in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. The date and time of our next regular meetings, Tuesday, October 5th, 2010, at 6 o'clock in this room, Committee of the Whole for Highway and Transportation, County Facilities, and Environment and Land Use. Tuesday, October 12th, 2010, at 6 p.m., Committee of the Whole for Finance, Policy, Personnel, and Appointments, Justice, and Social Services. The next regular county board meeting is it'll be Thursday, October 21st at 7 p.m. in this room. The consent agenda. Are there any items that you wish to take off the consent agenda? Mr. Beckett?
I move the consent agenda.
Second.
Second by Mr. Betts. Roll call.
Smucker.
Yes.
Wysocki.
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Beckett.
Yes.
Betts.
Yes.
Carter. Dennitz. Gladney.
Yes.
James.
Yes.
Jay.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Knott.
Yes.
Kurtz.
Yes.
McGinty.
Yes.
Michaels. Yes. Mosher.
Yes.
Nudo.
Yes.
O'Connor.
Yes.
Richards.
Yes.
Rosales.
Yes.
Sapp.
Yes.
Weibel.
Yes, motion carries. Public participation. We have a number of people who want to talk tonight, so we will be clocking you at 5 minutes maximum. If you can do it in less, we appreciate it. Mr. Harold Charlo.
My name is Harold Charlo. I live at 3610 North Lincoln Avenue in Urbana, and I would like to take this opportunity to invite the committee, if it's approved tonight, that's going to study the Olympian Drive Lincoln Avenue extension to come and meet with us and discuss our concerns. Since the crops now are out of the field, it affords a beautiful time to come up and look exactly where the roads will be positioned, give you a feel for how it's going to affect our farms and our homes. And so we hope that either individually or as a group, the new committee would contact us and come up and visit us. Thank you.
Mr. George Boyd.
Thank you for allowing me to speak. I've spoken before, but I always seem to run out of time before I'm through. So I think I gave each one of you a map last time, and I wanted to elaborate on that a little bit tonight. This is the map I gave you. And as you can see from this, these are existing roads. Ford Harris Road, like Windsor Road, which has been improved down here in the south, it's actually an older road, I believe. It's at least 140 years old, according to maps. And it's right here. Here's the proposed Olympian Road. It ends now here. And you can see from the existing road network that you can go anywhere you want to go right now. You can come down Market Street to an interchange here at Route 74. You can go east-west. You can go up here to I-57 and go north or south. You can take Leverett Road up here, and there is a grain elevator up here by the railroad. And you can come over here to Route 45, which is coming up from down here. And this road continues on all the way out to Royal and actually Route 49. Ford Harris Road, which is, I say, has been there a very, very long time. And you can get on here, you can come over here, you can come out of Lincoln Avenue, you got an interchange right here going in any direction on Route 74, in or out, west, east or west. You come over here to Route 45, you have another clover leaf. So you have complete access. Now the time people talk about, I'm not sure what the reason for building the road is. You say there's no roads to get around on now. We need more roads. But here is a complete road network. The distance from Olympian proposed to Fort Harris is approximately a half mile. Do you know how long it takes to drive a half mile at 30 miles an hour? 1 minute. Nobody drives 30 miles an hour, which means you'd be doing it in 45 seconds. I don't see the time saving in spending what will probably be $45 million by the time the overruns similar to Curtis Road occur. So I just don't understand it. Also, you have a large Native American area right here in the middle of all this. And I hear people talk, I see articles in the paper about, well, it's going to create 500 more jobs. It's going to bring in this much more money. Agriculture in Champaign County brings in a net profit of $370 million or more right now. That is actually a business. It already exists. And you never talk about putting this road in and how many people are going to lose their agricultural jobs and how much is going to be lost in agricultural production. I don't think you've mentioned how you're going to make a profit over what you already have. It just doesn't make sense. And today, in the newspaper, I saw an article that says, oh, the county's going to have to cut back because they're short on funds. No kidding. You're short on funds. Oh, so we'll spend more money. I don't care where the money comes from. It's taxpayer money. Whether it's been sent to Washington, D.C. to be laundered by the slick politicians there who send back a small amount to you, or whatever. Also, it just boggles my mind that this is even on the table. So I think those are all things that need to be considered. And the last time that Market Street and Leverett Road were really improved was 1942. Now, I understand they're going to do some resurfacing out there. I mean, it's a disaster. At the same time you're doing this, and this is not just in Champaign County, but it's throughout the state of Illinois, you're spending hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars promoting bicycle paths. And you're talking about using gas tax revenue for some of this. Bicycles don't pay gas taxes. They don't pay any taxes at all. You don't license them. So you're promoting all these people riding bicycles. If you all started riding bicycles, every time someone does that, the tax revenue from these bicycle paths we were putting so much money in don't generate any revenue.
Mr. Boyd, your 5 minutes is up.
Thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
Laura Hu, representing 21 clients around the Olympia Drive area.
Thank you for allowing me to address this board again this evening. On Tuesday, Vector, the St. Louis consulting firm hired by the city of Urbana to run the so-called public engagement portion of the Olympian Drive project, sent out their first electronic newsletter. You can't imagine my client's disappointment in its contents. Just a couple of weeks after this board made itself pretty clear that Project B didn't really tickle its fancy, the paper reported a change in focus from B to Lincoln Avenue. And just 2 days after the Gazette itself all but admitted defeat for the full project, the St. Louis consultants still haven't gotten the message. Like the bulldozers they hope to see up near Olympian Drive, the steering committee, Urbana, and the consultants continue to plow forward with plans for a full project. Why is it that the steering committee and the city of Urbana continue to be willing to spend taxpayer dollars on a St. Louis consulting firm to pursue a project scope that this board isn't interested in and that the public does not support? Months have now passed since the call for an independent needs assessment and demand study. Still, no study has been now forthcoming for months. Yet in that time, tens of thousands of taxpayer dollars have been spent getting input from stakeholders who have clearly said that they don't want the road, and asking officials like you where they want bike lanes and whether you like roundabouts. Information. Information is what we want. Independent and unbiased information is what we all need to make sense of this project. And information is exactly what we are not getting. Asking us questions about wildlife viewing and picnic areas, bike lanes, roundabouts, and road landscaping before a real needs assessment and demand study is done is not just cart before horse. It's egregious planning oversight, an insult to taxpayers, and poor public policy to boot. We understand the planners who designed the road over a decade ago are eager to get on with their project, but there is so much more at stake here. A public that does not support this project, a deflated economy, elected officials still seeking answers, and stakeholders whose lives would be irrevocably disrupted and who remain sidelined in the process. An independent needs assessment and demand study for this project is the only next logical step and the best use of the grant funds we have for this project at this point. Not more roundtables or open houses, not more e-newsletters or 200-page documents posted to a website, not more meetings. Just information. good, independently pursued information for everyone to base sound decisions from and to move us away from knee-jerk decisions, name-calling, and continued erosion of the public trust. We continue to be baffled by those who shy away from conducting such a full independent needs assessment, for it is the only way to truly understand the dynamics of this project. Why is it that we can't seem to get the answers to the complex questions that this project holds? When will we get those answers so real decisions on this project can be made? Those statements were made on behalf of the 21 clients that I represent. Thank you.
Mr. Devin Mapes.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Devin Mapes. I am the president of Illini Democrats, but tonight I speak not only for the Illini Democrats, but also for the College Republicans, and I vote as well. We've heard the arguments, the deliberation, the discussion, the reasoning, the rationale, the excuses for early voting, and where the location should be for that particular activity. It's been published in the community papers, the student paper. You've seen it on television. It's evident that this issue is very significant, as it should be, not just for access to voting, but or the principle behind it, but also because of the significant coverage it has been given through the media. We could stand here or sit here and deliberate forever on, whose interpretation is correct, who has the authority to do what. But honestly, most of us, I say most, probably are not as qualified to interpret that law as most of us are not lawyers or hold a formal legal education. And so that's one perspective. But one thing to consider, the University of Illinois is the premier public institution in this state. It so happens that that institution is in Champaign County in Illinois. You members sort of speak for that in some way. As an elected body, you have the authority to make decisions in the county in which that university resides, Champaign County. So, to me, it follows that the decisions you make as a body sort of reflect upon the University of Illinois and how you consider taking care of that university. Does that make sense? So, I would say that many individuals throughout the state are looking at the University of Illinois as a sort of a standard to look up to. I think we would all agree with that. This university is renowned not only in Illinois, the United States, but also in the world. I think it's important to set a precedent for the other 8 public universities in this state that the University of Illinois is committed to the principles of early voting and is how it should be. And I think you individuals have the power and the ability to do that. The question you should ask yourself is, how do you want to be reflected? Do you want to be the body that tries to hinder voting, or do you want to be the body that sort of promotes it and to its fullest extent? Yes, the students benefit probably the most by having early voting at one location over another. And some might argue that the community is less served by putting it also at one location over another. But in the end, I think by sacrificing service to one body as opposed to another, you sort of do not do the law as much justice as it should. And I think you should consider that the University of Illinois is something to consider in a larger picture, and you should probably consider how you would want to represent that image. So with that said, thank you. Can I take questions or no?
You cannot take questions.
Sorry, thank you.
Nolan Dreer.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Nolan Drade. I'm here to talk in support of the early voting and the Illini Union issue. And I'd just like to talk about the vast support we've received on campus. I have 600 signatures here from students, faculty, people involved with the university. I even got a priest to sign it, that all supported having early voting in the union. I have a letter here from Vice Chancellor Romano that asked to have early voting in the union. I have personally not heard any complaints from anybody other than a certain individual that are against early voting in the union. I don't think this is a Democrat issue. I don't think it's a Republican issue. I think it's a students' and people's rights issue. This year we're going to have hundreds of new voters in Champaign County and around the state voting in this election. And do we really want to show them the same politics, the same old Illinois politics that have bankrupted the state and led us to where we are today? I know I don't. I think especially in this election, now more than ever, we need to have levels of transparency. And I think if we have this election at Gregory, or if we have this polling place at Gregory Place, we're just not going to have that. And I think there was a cartoon in the DI today that summed it up better than I could. And I wish I could blow this up, but it's a picture of County Clerk Sheldon dressed as a pirate saying, well, if you really want to vote, and then he's holding a treasure map with really complicated instructions about how to get to Gregory Place. And I think that sums up the issue better than anyone in this room really can. Thank you.
David Pileski.
Hello, and I thank you for being here today. I'm a sophomore at the University of Illinois, a student senator and chairman of the Governmental Affairs Committee. And before I get to talking about early voting, I hope that I see each and every one of you after this meeting next week from 2 to 4 p.m. at the Pine Lounge at the Illini Union for our annual ice cream social. We already have members from Champaign City Council and Urbana City Council already committed to attending. So come meet your constituents, who you're serving, the students who are going to be affected by the early voting, and have ice cream on us. I mean, it's a pretty good deal if you ask me. But there is a very important issue that I would like to talk to you today, and that's early voting. I've spoken with many students, Democrats, Republicans, Independents, everyone, and they're all in agreement that this needs to be done at the Illini Union. The Illinois Student Senate debated this and passed a resolution, actually, as the official voice of the student body, that we would like to see this early voting take place at the Illini Union. Many students have gone to their classes and spoke. In a class of about 250 students, they were asked a simple question: do you know where Gregory Place is? Out of a class of 250 students, only 3 individuals rose their hand, and that includes the professor. What message are we sending if we're trying to allow for easy, accessible voting and most of the student population doesn't know? Granted, this is for more than just the student body. This is for the community, the faculty, and everyone in Champaign County. And the clear fact is the union is very easy and accessible, whether it be by car with the accessible parking lots that are close by the union where they aren't by Gregory Place, multiple public transit, and a lovely system of bike paths and sidewalks. To me, it's clear and easy and accessible for us to have it at the Illini Union. And I hope you take this opportunity to clear up this confusion and make a definitive choice for us. Thank you.
Mr. John Farney.
Good evening, I'm John Farney. I work here in the county, and I'm Vice President of AFSCME Local 900. First, I want to speak to the question about the auditor referendum and putting it back on the ballot for the April election. I opposed having the auditor referendum on the November ballot, and I remain opposed to that. I believe that's an office that should stay as an elected office so it can be independent, and that the people can tell their auditor how he needs to do his job. We'll have an opportunity to change the person in that office in 2012. That person didn't do their job, they should be changed. We should keep it that way so that people have their choice. A comment was made in the newspaper this week when it came to the early voting center that Mr. Richards said that perhaps it's time to revisit the Election Commission because you don't like what the county clerk has done for the early voting center. This board will do the same thing to an appointed auditor. You'll hold that person's job hostage. This is not a good thing for the county. It's not a good thing for our government to have a job held hostage by other elected officials. So I urge you to oppose putting this on the April ballot when there will be a very low turnout, quite frankly. I mean, this is a political gimmick that's going to bite Mr. Klein in the butt. So I urge you to oppose this. On the early voting center, that's an issue that is very close to my heart because of where I work. First, Gregory Place is a good location. It's, I believe Mr. Kasich had in his column this week, 800-yard walk. Boy, I'd get tired doing that. 3 whole football fields, oh boy. I'm sorry, 8 football fields, big deal. It's still not a bad walk. In fact, we can all use to exercise a little bit. So you keep walking and you go down and do your early voting. I'm sure the people that own businesses around Gregory Place love hearing how they're in this black hole. No one's heard of Rosati's Pizza or Mary Ann's Diner. Well, I hope to see no one at Mary Ann's Diner after the bars close this weekend. Sure, they'll be able to find their hash browns. Gregory Place is accessible to all voters, including, lo and behold, people who pay taxes in this county. People who have owned property and have lived here all their lives can park in front of a place and vote. What a novel concept. Instead of taking orders from Chicago politicians like Mike Madigan and John Cullerton, you can take direction from people who live here. What a concept. But not on this board. You have to turn it into a political issue. It's not about the people. It's about we're Democrats and we're going to stand together. You know, as a county employee, we have seen this over and over where this board takes issues and you decide, okay, we're going to micromanage Mark Sheldon because we don't like him politically. But you have a nursing home that for the last 10 years has been an absolute disaster and you did nothing. You passed it off to another board because we don't want to micromanage. But you do in other offices. When are you going to start micromanaging the state's attorney's office and telling him when to charge people? I don't agree with everything the state's attorney does. I'm sure you don't either. When are you going to start telling her, you're not doing your job, we want it done this way? It hasn't been done yet. I think you should start. There's a lot of people in this community that think you should start. Taking orders from the people in Chicago. They've done just a great job, too. You know, $13 billion in the hole. The reason we have a budget deficit and people are being laid off in this county is because the state doesn't pay their bills. Yet you're going to listen to people from Chicago telling you what to do. Have you not had enough? There's a reason people across the country are fed up. And it's because you've got a very few that are at the top that are in charge and they're telling you what to do. And you just keep following. Follow them right off the cliff. That's what I say. Change is coming. It's been building up. It doesn't matter to me if it's Republican or Democrat change. Change is coming, and it's desperately needed. Finally, I want to say something else about the early voting center and comments that are made. There are county bargaining unit employees in the county clerk's office. We have integrity. If Mark Sheldon is not doing his job, if he's doing something illegal, by God, I'm going to say something about it. Because I have integrity. And every person in that office has integrity. Don't forget it. We're doing our jobs. Come in and see it. It is the busiest time of the year right now for our office. Come and see how an election is actually run. We'd love to have you.
Time's up, Mr. Farney. Thank you. Mr. John Teeter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will not take 5 minutes. If this county board decides to force an early voting precinct on the University of Illinois campus, they are doing nothing more than legalized discrimination, separating one group of people for a special privilege. There is already a very accessible location for early voting in this county. If people can drive a 40 or 50-mile round trip to come to the Brookins Center to vote, the students and faculty and staff at the University of Illinois can get on the green bus, which stops out here every 15 minutes, and do the same. Thank you very much.
Ms. Sheena Harrison.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Shayna Harrison, and I am the political director for Illini Democrats. But tonight, I'm not here to talk to you about politics. Tonight, let's talk about our civic duty, which is voting. Some of our most precious rights endowed to us in a democracy include the right to free and fair elections and our right to declare our voice through our power of voting. It is our job as citizens to ensure those rights not only for students, but for the community. This is a community issue, and it needs to be on the forefront of our minds. There's a current issue regarding the centralized polling place, and it has caused quite a stir, as you can see tonight. We've all heard and read the story. We've all heard the different sides, the different cases have been made. But tonight, we need to make a decision. The election's 40 days away, I believe, 39 days away. So it's time to make that decision. As a student, I recognize the importance of Illini Union at the University of Illinois. The amount of foot traffic and accessibility at the Union is unmatched with any part of campus. This isn't about technicalities. This is about enacting upon our civic duty. This is why you guys are on the county board. You have the civic engagement to reach out with the community. And that is exactly why we need to figure out our centralized polling place for the community as a whole. This is why, regardless of party affiliation, age, creed, or color, we can come to an agreement and pick a centralized polling place, which, as a student at the University of Illinois, Illini Union would be our choice. Thank you. Have a good night.
Mr. Tony Fabry.
You folks have heard from me a few times on the issue of the county auditor's office and whether to keep it elected or not. And I'm not going to rehash the things I've said before. I think you know my position. I do want to thank the county auditors who have come here tonight to urge you to keep the county auditor's office elected here in Champaign County. We have the county auditors from Madison County, from Will County, and from DuPage County here with us tonight. I do want to take the opportunity to thank them for coming here. I also want to draw your attention to something that I placed on your desks. I know it's a memo to the board from the Chief Deputy Auditor, Carol Wadley. A lot of you know Carol, and a lot of you know of Carol, and many very flattering things have been said about Carol by members of this board, and all of those things are completely deserved. She's a 30-year employee with the county. She's worked for 4 different county auditors in this county, and she is writing to you as the person who knows more about the Champaign County Auditor's Office than anyone in this room, honestly, more than anyone in this county. And I would hope that those of you who care about professionalism in the auditor's office, and I would hope those of you who have sung Carol's praises and have praised the job she does would listen to her on the subject that she knows more about than anyone else. And just for the public record, I do want to read a couple sections here of her letter to you. This is quoting now. The main function of the county auditor is to make county government accountable to the public. Good accounting and financial reporting are important tools used to achieve that end. But you don't need to be an accountant to be accountable. What you do need is the freedom and willingness to look with a critical eye at what goes on in county government, the freedom and willingness to be open and honest with the public about what goes on in county government, the freedom and willingness to hold county government to standards that are acceptable to the public. No employee appointed by the county board or county administrator would have that freedom to speak out without fear of losing his job. The county auditor is accountable directly to the public and thus should be elected by the public. If the voters do not like the job a particular county auditor is doing, they have the opportunity every 4 years to vote him out of office. But if the county auditor is made an appointed position, you're taking away the voters' right to choose forever after. An elected county auditor serves a vital role in keeping county government honest and open. An appointed county auditor or a county department under the county administrator would be trying to perform that function with their hands tied and would ultimately fail. To those who see this as a political issue, I think your minds are made up and there's not much we can do. But to those of you who actually care about professionalism and the ability of the county auditor's office to do the job that it has done very well for decades for the taxpayers of this county. I urge you to consider the recommendation of Carol Wadley, who really knows more about this than any of you or me or anyone else in this room. Thank you very much.
Mr. Duffy Blackburn.
Good evening. My name is Duffy Blackburn. I'm the county auditor for Will County. I reside at 921 Oakland Avenue, Joliet, Illinois. I'm a CPA. I have 2 master's degrees, 1 MBA, and 1 master's in accounting. Previous to me being elected to county auditor, I was an outside auditor, independent auditor that would come in and audit counties, school districts, other smaller districts, water districts, municipalities. I want to talk and show my strong opposition to the elimination of a county auditor. I want to talk about 3 things: what can happen, what the auditor does, and then if no auditor, what then do you rely on? What can happen in any municipality, there can be the petty cash drawer can just go right into somebody's pocket, and mysteriously, that drawer is just filled back up with any expenditure line that you guys grant them. It could look like salaries are being paid, but it turns out they're like CEO packages. Sometimes there can be expenditures that are paid for nothing. There could be federal grant programs that expenditures then can be spent for anything other than what their expected use was. We, in this, progressively conservative time to look at all our money that's going to the federal government coming back, as this local resident has talked about. Other things can happen that are not being accountable to the taxpayer. Now, the county auditor looks at all the claims, looks at every bill. They look at if it passes the contract that you guys approve. They look at the resolution. They look at if it's being overpaid, if it's being underpaid, if there are late charges. They actually go in and count the petty cash drawer. They look at every account. They're looking at if the nursing home residents are missing any money. What you can rely on, if no county auditor, you rely on outside auditors. Now, as an outside auditor, do we look for fraud? No, not necessarily. Do we look for and consult to you about performance and operations and waste? No, not exactly. Now, you can rely on consultants. Now, that would be good to, I don't know what the spending on consultants are, but you can choose to rely on consultants. You can appoint an inspector general as well. Now, or inspector, or appoint a county auditor. That would serve basically the same function. It would cost basically the same amount of money. And if it's appointed underneath the county board or administrator, then you lose some independence. Now, many counties are looking towards putting together an audit committee. I don't know if you've discussed that here. Other counties are. They want to show more independence. They want to show more oversight, more accountability to the taxpayer. I propose you look at those different options. If you do go away with the auditor's office that I oppose, you should look at looking at an inspector general, appointing a new auditor, going through with an audit committee. But if you have an auditor that can be the internal function for that, those can be really benefited. You can benefit from an inside county auditor to help the county board look at oversight. Other than that, I appreciate your time. I know there's other county auditors to talk, and I don't want to spend too much time. I could take the full 5 minutes if you'd like, but thank you again.
Mr. Rick Fasten.
Good job of pronouncing that, Mr. Chairman. Most people get that wrong. I want to thank you and members of the county board for allowing me the opportunity again to come before you and speak tonight. And as president of the Auditors Association, it's going to come to a surprise to everyone sitting here tonight that I'm in favor of the auditors staying under the same circumstance that he is. I've sat where you guys have sat and where you ladies have sat out there. I was on the county board for 6 years before I got elected countywide. My office has won numerous awards. We have a balanced budget with a healthy reserve, and we are debt-free. I am not a CPA, but I am an administrator, and I've got over 22 years of administrating. And I know there's difficult decisions that you have to make as county board members. I miss the legislative process. I miss the ability to be able to vote on different topics. But sitting on both sides of this, and I have that unique experience in doing this, I can tell you that if you eliminate this position, it's bad business and it's bad government. We just in the last 6 months to a year caught one person stealing that was prosecuted for over $31,000, and I publicly challenged a payment, which these are all newspaper articles that we have on a vacation payout that I don't believe if you have an official here that's appointed may not have the autonomy to go into those offices and do those kind of things. They are responsible to the people that appoint them. The general public does not deserve that. The general public deserves autonomy. They deserve to vote who they want as their county auditor. And that's where this is at. And again, I've sat on both sides of this, and I can speak from experience. Difficult decision in here tonight. I don't propose to sit here and know the components of why, or the reasoning of why you've arrived or you're going to arrive at a decision maybe to abolish this. But I beseech you tonight, this is not good government. And it's not good business. It's not responsible to the citizens of Champaign County, the fine citizens of Champaign County. I know everyone here, the intent is good. Public service is difficult in these times. We all know that. We're all scrutinized. But I ask you, do the right thing tonight. There's a mechanism in place for doing away with someone if they're not doing their job, and that's called an election every 4 years. And I, again, don't know the intricacies of what's went on up here, but I know what value the office holds. And I ask you tonight, as an elected official, just as you guys are and you ladies are, do the right thing. Provide good service to the citizens of Champaign County. And I think if you keep the office the way it is, let the elections decide who your auditor is going to be, and I think we're all going to be better off in the long run. Again, thank you very much. It's the second time I've been in here. I'm on the county board again when I come up here, but I want to thank you for the time and allowing me to speak. Thank you very much.
Mr. Bob Grogan.
If you have a bad public servant, do you punish the servant or the public? My name is Bob Grogan. I'm the county auditor in DuPage. I'm a CPA, and I'm a certified fraud examiner. 6 weeks into my office, I just took office a little under 2 years ago, I put the entire county's checkbook online. Now, I didn't do it because somebody told me to. Didn't do it because someone suggested it. I did it because I worked directly for the people. I decided to take a little initiative and do a little extra. Now, since that time, several counties around the state have also now put their checkbooks online. I get calls from municipalities, townships. I've gotten calls from other states. This is because I'm accountable directly to the people. We've had some bad run of governors lately, haven't we? No one is calling for the elimination of the governor's office. Maybe we should. Yeah, that'd be a good referendum, I think. Maybe we should pitch that. The reason we don't do that is because perhaps people made a bad choice. You don't go back to the people and say, you know, you're not so good at picking elected officials. Would you like to just give that whole job thing up as far as picking people? Because you're not very good at picking them. We don't do that. Why? Because the people will learn in the long run. They will learn maybe what the county auditor really is supposed to do, what the qualifications are, the questions to ask that person, whether they, get up early enough in the morning to make it into meetings, whatever it is. The people will adapt. Now, it is a very elegant argument to say, let's give the people the choice. as to whether they want to have a county auditor. And you know, democracy is a great thing. Winston Churchill said, democracy is the absolute best form of government except for everything else. I'm sorry, he said that. I take that back. It's actually worst form of government except for everything else. I messed up my quote. Sorry about that, Winston. And he's right. And we can maybe push too much democracy into the public and go and have them wrestle with, you know, the nuances. And I'll challenge everybody in this room and some of my fellow county auditors to understand all the nuances of a county auditor. But let me tell you that some of the fundamental differences between that appointed role versus the elected. I am a peer of those other countywide elected officials, the sheriff, the state's attorney, and so on and so forth. You appoint someone that's the county board's employee going in and saying they want to go and look at stuff. I personally don't think statutorily they get to go and knock on the sheriff's door and say, I want to count the cars today. They can't go in a state's attorney and say, I want to look at this fund. My office, now there's always this distinction of, well, we already have an auditor. We're paying them a lot more money. You know, we pay them a lot of money to come in and this outside auditor. I'll give you a good example up in DuPage. You know, as squeaky clean as a reputation we like to claim, our auditor gave our state's attorney a nice, clean opinion. Everything's all hunky-dory. And then we got a phone call, and my office went in, and we found $1 million embezzlement in our state's attorney's office. And that person went to jail. And to this day, you go around the state's attorney's office, they have coffee mugs with that lady's picture on it, little mug shots. As a reminder, someone who worked right next to them, that they can do the same thing. Your outside auditors aren't going to catch that. They have this big concept of materiality. We don't have to. We can roll up our sleeves and say, today I'm looking at this thing down to the penny, and you're not paying some outside consultant fee. I appreciate that it's great to give people a way to vent, to go and say, you know, let's put it on the ballot, let's let the people decide. Well, they do pay you to make some complicated decisions. We don't have direct democracy here in America for a reason, because government is complicated. And I think that on balance, it is your decision, and you should evaluate that this position is a good position to have when held by the right person. Thank you very much.
Is there anybody else who wishes to speak at this time from the public? Okay, we'll close public participation. Communications from the board. Mr. Nudo.
Yeah, I'm very proud to announce that my youngest son and his wife, Carrie, just had our 5th granddaughter tonight at 5:15, little Olivia Kathleen. So I just wanted the board to know and enjoy my happiness. Thank you.
Thank you, Grandpa. I have a couple announcements. Actually, I've already given these to the board in a note last week, but this is to the public. I received notice from the Illinois Department of Juvenile Justice indicating that the Champaign County Juvenile Detention Center passed its annual inspection with absolutely 0 violations. I also received a letter from the Illinois Department of Corrections indicating that they passed their annual inspection with, again, 0 noncompliances and noted 7 improvements from the last inspection. Anything else? Okay. Let's move on to approval of the minutes of August 19th, 2010. Moved by Mr. Schmucker, second by Mr. Rosales. Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Standing committee reports. Highway and Transportation. Ms. Cowart.
The Highway and Transportation has a resolution number 7479 appropriating $25,032 from the county motor fuel tax fund for the Champaign County share of the Champaign-Urbana urbanized area transportation study, and I so move.
Second by Mr. Carter. Discussion. Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. All opposed? Aye. Motion carries. Anything else, Ms. Cowart?
No, there's something in other business, but I guess it'll be at the...
We can wait until then. Thank you, Ms. Cowart. Environment and Land Use, Ms. Wysocki.
I move the adoption of Resolution 7482, which is approving the fiscal year 2011 county planning contract work plan.
Second by Mr. Kurtz. Discussion. Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Anything else, Ms. Wasaki? That's it. Okay, Justice and Social Services, Mr. Gladney.
I move the adoption of ordinance number 871, revised Champaign County Animal Control Ordinance.
Second by Mr. Smucker, second by Ms. Anderson. Mr. James.
Again, I just want to point out that here we are making cuts in our budgets and not giving raises and everything else we need to do, but yet we're going to turn around and charge our citizens more fees to license their pets, when I was told the other day at the meeting that we're only collecting 4% roughly of the fines that are laying out there. I think this would be better served, in my estimation, if we were raising our fees and collecting those fees on those that are not doing what they're supposed to do. It's tough for everybody. We're making cuts, but yet, as the gentleman said earlier, we keep putting it on the back of the taxpayers that are doing the right thing, so I won't support this as is.
Further discussion. Ms. Anderson?
On the other hand, there are many taxpayers that do not have pets, and we expect this office to pay its own way. And if we don't up the fees to cover the costs, then are we going to take that out of the corporate fund, which we heard the earlier reference and read the newspaper today to see that we're going to have to make further cuts. So I think that Stephanie has worked very hard on this, and I think this needs to be passed.
Anybody else want to discuss this item? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries.
I move the adoption of resolution number 7483, authorizing an intergovernmental agreement for animal impound services with the city of Champaign.
Second by Ms. Anderson. Discussion. Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries.
That's all for justice. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gladney. Finance, Mr. McGinty.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I recommend adoption of resolution number 7488, purchasing not following purchasing policy, and I so move.
Second by Mr. Beckett. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
I recommend adoption of resolution number 7489, payment of claims authorization, and I so move.
Second by Mr. Beckett. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
I recommend adoption of resolution number 7490, a budget amendment for $36,000 to cover grant expenditures for the fiscal 2010 year, and I so move.
I'm going to give a second to Ms. Coward. Sorry, Mr. Beckett. Discussion. Seeing none, roll call.
Schrader.
Yes.
Smucker.
Yes.
Wysocki.
Yes.
Yes.
Anderson. Beckett.
Yes.
Betts.
Yes.
Carter. Cowart. Dennitz.
Yes.
Gladney.
Yes.
James.
Yes.
Jay.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Knott.
Yes.
Kurtz.
Yes.
McGinty.
Yes, sorry.
Michaels.
Yes.
Mosher.
Yes.
Nudo.
Yes.
O'Connor.
Yes.
Richards.
Yes.
Rosales.
Yes.
Sapp. Weibel.
Yes, motion carries.
I recommend adoption of resolution number 7491, approving the addition of a position to the Champaign County Mental Health Board, and I so move. Second.
Second by Mr. James. Discussion. Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries.
I recommend adoption of resolution number 7492, approving IT staffing change, and I so move. Second.
Second by Mr. Mosher. Discussion. Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
That is all from finance. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McGinty. Mr. Beth, Policy, Personnel, and Appointments.
I move adoption of resolution number 7484, establishing the Olympian Lincoln Special Committee. So moved.
Second by Mr. Knott. Mr. Betts, take over the chair for a moment.
Weibel.
Since the committee as a whole meeting for policy, Mr. Matt Gladney has informed me that he does not wish to be on this committee, so therefore I'd like to withdraw his name, and would Mr. Gladney indicate that is his wishes?
That's correct.
So therefore, I'd like to nominate Ms. Lorraine Cowart instead for that position.
Second. There's a second by Mr. Beckett. Discussion? Mr. Carter.
I have a question.
Sure. Go ahead.
I can't see. I'm glad there's a lot of good comments here tonight, but I can't see how in the world that you appoint a committee and then turn around and just set it aside and go on, you know. We've been doing this for quite a while now, and the public, taxpayers are right. It is wrong. What we've done is not democratic at all. You have a committee. You have a committee for the highway. You have one for each department in this. Why don't you let them do the job? And I don't know, Mr. Trevor, I don't know how you let this stuff get back on the agenda anyway. You have that prerogative. You don't have to put that on there, and it's wrong. Now you asking me to vote myself. I'm on the highway committee. And I'm voting against me? This is ridiculous. It is so ridiculous, and we need to come to our senses and start doing the democratic process in this body, because it's getting bad. And you never know who come up with all these ideas. Or, you know, you come to a meeting and they say, well, we're not going to, you know, things have changed. We are not going to do this anymore. Now, to me, that's not democratic at all. And that's what's wrong with a lot of nursing homes. I think if the committee had had the chance to do that job on the nursing home, been better. But they didn't. And I don't see how you keep getting away with this wrongdoing that we are doing. So I'm not voting against myself. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carter. Mr. Knott, I believe you were the original person who came up with this idea and shared it with folks. Could you very briefly outline the purpose of this committee?
My intent was to have a small group of county board members that Pius has nominated to talk about these issues, bring the landowners to the table, and other parties, the cities and others that are concerned and involved, and see if there was some consensus that could be reached on the stretch of road from, I guess, existing Lincoln Avenue, for example, connecting to the proposed Olympian up to that connector point. So it's simply a discussion. It's obviously going to be a very quick committee because our board term expires in November. And Pius and I have also discussed, this committee won't be doing the negotiating. We're hopefully that we are the catalyst for staff to have conversations to carry that out.
Thank you, Mr. Nutt. Mr. Beckett?
I wanted to make sure I understood the question. The question right now is
Ms. Cowart
on
That's
the committee,
correct.
right? All right, thank you.
The motion is to approve Ms. Cowart being on the committee, and then we go to the committee. She's already been, it's already been mentioned. All those in favor of adding Ms. Cowart to the committee? Aye. Those opposed, the same. Motion carries. Now we are to the main motion, which is the full committee being appointed by the chair with Ms. Cowart included. Any discussion on that main motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, the same. Aye. Motion carries.
Go ahead, Mr. Betts.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move adoption of resolution number 7485, approving award of contract to Clifton Gunderson LLP for financial auditing services for Champaign County, which in light of Mr. McGinty's removing the matter from finance.
No.
We should still keep this?
Different item.
Different item. Okay. So moved.
Second.
Second by Mr. Beckett. Mr. James.
Well, again, I'm going to speak out on this issue. We're doubling the rate we paid the previous auditing firm. I have a big concern with that. We're cutting staff raises. We're cutting departments where they need to cut. We're raising fees on cats and dogs. But then we're going to turn around and come up with this money to pay an auditing firm more money that's coming from the taxpayers. And as that gentleman, again, I'm going to allude to him, said it so well, we're always raising and spending, but there has to come a time we got to look at it and be sensible. So I think that with what we had, and we won't go through that discussion because I just thought, what we were doing was unfair, and I heard all the reasoning. But I'm a firm believer if you're working with people and you're doing the right thing, you treat them right. I never heard the feds, I never heard the state come in here and say, hey, your auditing firm just isn't doing what they're supposed to be doing, you need to change. But we took it upon ourselves to do so, and now we're going to pay for it. And I just think it's an injustice to the taxpayers. I don't spend my money like that. I try to do the right thing with my money, and that's how I'm here to do for the taxpayers. That's just my 2 cents worth.
Mr. Smucker.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, how many bids were there for this? Can we know that kind of?
We received 2 responses.
So only 2?
Mm-hmm.
And was this the less expensive of the 2?
Yes, it is.
And one final question. Is this the situation in which we barred the previous firm from
the previous outside auditor had been engaged by this county for 15 years, and the determination was it was time for a fresh outside auditor.
If this is voted down tonight, could we issue another RFP? What would happen if this is voted down tonight?
I don't know if there are legal ramifications. If this is voted down tonight, you still need an outside auditor next year, so we would have to figure out what we would do.
Mr. McGinty.
Sam, those were good questions, and to get back to one of Stan's concerns, the only other thing that I would add, and I think I'm the only county board member that was on the review committee for these 2 proposals. If Deb brought this up at the committee of the whole, and that is the comps from other counties doing similar work show that there are, in many cases, more expensive in comparably sized counties, that they're paying more right now. So I think that we were lucky, I guess, to have a grandfathered rate for quite a few years, and now these are more of the going rate, if you will, and this was the lowest of the 2 bids.
Ms. Michaels.
Can I have a roll call, please?
Second.
Mr. Richards, sorry. Mr. Richards?
Just wanted to say Clifton Gunderson's a quality firm. This is a very competitive bid. And just with the specialization of what we're looking for here, if we put out another RFP, it's pretty unlikely that we're going to be getting different results.
Let's go with Mr. Sapp.
Just a question on the packet that was at our desk this evening from them. On page
Could you
2,
closer to the microphone, please?
I'm sorry, on page 2, the unanticipated services, I assume, and maybe Mr. McGinty can answer this, that in the review, my concern with that and reading that over is that there seems like an awful lot of vagueness there that could potentially add to the cost of this agreement. Am I reading too much into that?
I don't have the agreement in front of me to be able to answer that well. Oh, I'm sorry.
Typical first time.
I think and I'm sorry if I may, while he's reading that, fees and terms, that's the first area that's discussed there. And then at the very bottom, it says, we will, of course, advise you before undertaking any work that we would require an increase in the fee arrangement, and then below that, it talks about unanticipated services. And again, it seems to have an awful lot there that I would have assumed would have been in the agreement of the $70,000 plus.
Deb, do you care to answer?
I just think that what is identified here would be outside of the realm of what you would typically expect in conducting an annual audit. These are unique situations that, would come up, and I think you still have the ability to, they're not just going to do it and then bill you. They would still work with us first if they thought that the scope was going to exceed what the contract states. The contract states the number of hours and the rate for those hours for the audit to be performed. So this would be if it went beyond that.
Go ahead. Keep going, Larry.
Okay, I understand that, but I guess my question then is, if they perform the services, they get to a point where they need to do some additional things, and it's not approved because of the increased funds, is the audit then not complete, and then we're out to $70,000 plus? But we're kind of bound that if they begin the audit and there's some additional fees, we're kind of bound to pay those fees.
I would think so.
I would agree. We probably are. That's right. If I recall, actually, our previous auditor did that a couple of years ago. He asked for some extra fees. I think it was 2 years ago, last summer. Ms. Wysocki.
Has this company audited counties before?
Yes, actually, they just finished a 3-year contract with Peoria County. They do Vermilion County. There are a number of counties that they currently or have performed audits on.
So going along with Mr. Sapp's question, I would think that they, on coming in, would have pretty much a set standard of items that they would really be looking for as they do their audit work.
Yes, and the RFP was pretty specific and clear about what those expectations are.
Yeah.
And they based their response and the number of hours that it would require for them to do that work by the various staff members who will work on this audit on those statements in our RFP and their assessment of what it would take to do that.
So the chances of really asking for things, for items over and beyond the ordinary would probably be kind of minimal, don't you think?
I would think it would only be because there was something that's fairly out of the ordinary and unforeseen that causes the number of hours to get the audit done to substantially increase.
Mr. Chu?
On other audits that I've seen, not one for the county, by the way, but other audits I've seen where they didn't get the adequate information that they needed for a specific item, they would take exception to that in their report at the end. So we would still get our audit with the explanation of the exception that they took.
Thank you, Mr. J. Mr. McGinty?
I read this as a situation where when you, in most cases, a list like this is coverage for when the client changes their scope. It wouldn't be the provider changing scope. It's for when we, in our case, we would change our mind on what we need, and it would expand their services. So they have a list there to cover them, their back end, if we change our mind and expand our scope.
Mr. Noodle.
I think the biggest area where extra charges come in is where the federal government requires different changes over the term of the contract, and that's what happened the last time. There were additional requirements that were that we have to do, and that's pretty common in private business and in government. If the feds come up with something that is additionally required, that we have to participate, and that's where the costs come involved.
Mr. James.
Well, I was just going to say, in some of the audits I've been in, if our staff doesn't get the necessary paperwork in line and produce it by the time it's supposed to be there, that audit firm does charge us for that time. And then also I was going to say on an RFP, we've done that many times. If something comes in over budget, or we've hired attorneys who they inflate their fees, and we go back out and look, that to me, that's just good business common sense. My intention was, looking at this, that we should never, in my estimation, have put someone on there that couldn't bid it. At least their bid, or proposal, I should say, would have came in, and we could have been comparing it to the others. I don't understand how anybody can sit here when you get something. We all like good deals. My God, if I get a good car for a good deal, I'm happier than anything. But then we turn around when it's not our money, and it just upsets me, because I know I wouldn't open my wallet and pay out $100 and some thousand more, whatever this life of the contract's going to be. I know it's going to be, double what we're paying now. It follows no logic in my head, and it doesn't make sense. And I just hope someday all of us take a deep breath. Yes, all the things that are said about another pair of eyes make sense and what have you. But again, I go back. They weren't doing anything wrong. So we went out and looked. Now we're going to pay. Then we hear this argument we're comparing to other counties. Well, we're not other counties. There's other things within our own area that we point to, such as the U of I that has audit done, and other places. Let's look at those numbers. But let's quit comparing to all these other bigger counties and what have you, because their life doesn't affect our life, and we don't live the way they do in most times. So I'm still going to be against this. I just think it's unfair due to all the cuts we've made and things we've asked of our employees. And if I was an employee, it would smack in my face to think you got money to do this, but you can't help us that help you.
Further discussion? All right, roll call.
Schrader.
Yes.
Smucker.
No.
Wysocki.
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Beckett.
Yes.
Betts.
Yes.
Carter.
No.
Cowart.
No.
Dennitz. Gladney.
Yes.
James.
No.
Jay.
No.
Jones. Knott. Kurtz. McGinty.
Yes.
Michaels.
No.
Mosher.
Yes.
Nudo.
No.
O'Connor.
No.
Richards.
Yes.
Rosales.
Yes.
Sapp.
No.
Whiteville.
Yes. I lost count. What do you have?
10.
And 14 yes.
14 yes? Motion carries.
Move adoption of resolution number 7487, placing the question of elimination of the elected county auditor on the Champaign County on the April 2011 election ballot. So moved.
Second by Mr. Mosher. Discussion. Mr. O'Connor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Does everyone understand what we're voting on here? We're voting to put it on the ballot. We're not taking a position one way or the other when we do vote, are we?
Let's put it on the ballot.
Put it on the ballot.
Further discussion. Mr. Carter?
When do the job come up for re-election?
2 years, I believe.
It's on the ballot.
In 2012, it will be.
Then it's on the ballot.
Yeah.
And you ask questions of these boards, but you never get an answer. And I think that's something else is not democratic either. You should be able to get an answer when you ask somebody a question. And I don't want to act it out of context, but Mr. Chairman, may I have the liberty after, at the end of the meeting, good or wrong, I got a couple of questions that I need answers of.
We can do that under new business.
Okay.
Further discussion. Mr. Kurtz.
We have had 3 distinguished auditors come from far away to discuss this very important item. And this is an important item. This is the difference between oversight and politics. the difference between an audit that would be independent and perhaps not so. One of the points that was made by one of our distinguished guests here tonight was the fact that if this does get on the ballot and we vote out the auditor, we're going to put ourselves in a position of having to pay, as we just talked about, Mr. James, an outside auditor to do a lot more work, because an appointed auditor would not have the statutes behind them to be able to go into different departments and make a complete and factual audit. And I think that without that authority behind them, and I've asked one of the auditors here for that opinion, who've already have already had that experience. I feel that we're moving ahead here for more political reasons than we're moving ahead for efficiency or whatever reasons are being used to deny the voters the right to remove an elected official. So I feel it's important that we look very carefully at eliminating elected officials, because if we do this one, we open the Pandora's box for others. And in our case, then the next board can do it with the recorder of deeds. The next board can do it with the coroner. It all depends on whose political persuasion is running and in majority of the board. I will vote against this because it has nothing to do with the auditor that sits in the board on that elected official now. But in the future, to have an independent auditor, I think, is essential for a county that has millions of dollars at risk of the taxpayers' money. Thank you.
Ms. Anderson.
I would echo all that Mr. Kurtz has said, but in addition to that, it seems very political. Even if you are wanting to put it on the ballot to get the voice of the people, we know that the April election will be a low turnout, and if we really wanted to have, a wide voice of people speaking, it would seem that it would be better in a general election. And I know what was said at committee, we were making Mr. Klein the evil person for not sharing the information that we should have found out for ourselves. But aside from that, and I've heard people laughing and commenting that because it's going to be on the April, it's to their advantage, it'll help, to eliminate that office. So it has become very political, and I'm opposed to it, but I'm also opposed to the timing of the April election.
Further discussion?
Second.
Well, if there's no discussion, we don't need to call a question.
Roll call.
I think a roll call would be appropriate.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. James. Okay, roll call.
Schrader.
Yes.
Smucker.
No.
Wysocki.
Yes.
Anderson.
No.
Beckett.
Yes.
Betts.
No.
Carter.
No.
Cowart.
No.
Dennett.
Yes.
Gladney.
No.
James.
No.
Jay.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Knott.
Yes.
Kurtz.
No.
McGinty.
Yes.
Michaels.
No.
Mosier.
Yeah.
Nudo.
Yes.
O'Connor.
Yes.
Richards.
No.
Rosales.
Yes.
Sapp.
Yes.
Weibel.
No. I got 13 to 11.
11.
I have 11.
Okay. Motion carries.
Yep, 13 to 11.
Motion carries, 13 to 11. Okay, one more item, Mr. Betts, on the addendum.
Mr. Chair, before we get to that last item, and I don't know whether it's appropriate before there's a motion, after, but the state's attorney, I think, rendered an opinion regarding the power of the county board in this matter. Could I ask that before we do motions, what that opinion is?
You want your copy?
I believe more of you have that opinion in front of you than I do. I guess I will ask simply if there are any. Does anybody not have a copy? Do you have any questions? I'm not. Mr. Beckett.
Mr. DeThorne, can I summarize your opinion as, in essence, saying that the new untested statute is more specific than the general statute, and since it refers to the election authority, it appears that the county board is without authority to establish the early voting location on campus?
Yes, that was what I intended to say, and I apologize. I will embarrassedly tell you that sometimes it's difficult for me to figure out how to reach each of the 27 members here. I know some like some legal explanation and others don't.
I'd like to know what it says.
It says that in this case, my opinion is that the county clerk makes this decision, and this board has no ability to influence that.
Mr. Beckett?
Well, we have ability to influence by logic and persuasion.
To the extent your logic and persuasion are effective, then yes, I stand corrected.
Touché.
You're right.
Further questions for Mr. DeThorne? Mr. Richards?
Does the state's attorney's office have an opinion on whether Gregory Place is legally admissible under 96-1008?
Can you say that again, please? I'm not sure what you're referring to with 96-1008.
The early voting law, 96-1008, specifically talks about campuses and the university giving space to the relevant election authority. Is it your opinion that Gregory Place qualifies?
I tend to get in trouble when I don't understand exactly what I'm being asked. I'm looking at 10 ILCS 5/1-20, and I honestly don't know what you're referring to.
The particular statute, Public Law 96-1008.
I have to tell you that I tend not to work in terms of public law. Many attorneys, hopefully I'll get some support here, work on the Illinois compiled statutes. I'm not trying to beg your question. I'm really not trying to avoid it. Do you have the opinion in front of you? I can give this to you.
Staring at the opinion.
Same statute. Same statute.
Thank you.
The question is, under this early voting statute, which we have to enforce for student voting, is it your opinion that Gregory Place, where the clerk intends to have the student pilot project, it qualifies under the law?
Mr. Richards, I apologize. I haven't been asked to look into that. It would seem to me that the two questions, well, I haven't been asked to look into that, and it would be remiss, unprofessional, and unethical for me to answer that question. I have no objection to answering that after I have time to give you the opinion to which you are entitled.
Further questions for Mr. DeThorne on this subject? Okay, Mr. Betts.
So I gather what we do have a right to try to influence, but we cannot create actually designate the polling place, which is, the point I'm trying to make is to see whether our resolution's in order, and my reading is that it's in order based on what the state's attorney has just said. So I move adoption of resolution number 7506, which is in support of locating the early voting site at the Illini Union at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, pursuant to Public Act 96-1008, which creates a public university registration voting pilot project under 10 ILCS 5/1-2, and I so move.
Second.
Second by Mr. Richards. Discussion. Mr. James.
Well, I just want to say, after listening to those students, anybody's got the right to come in and voice their opinion and ask for things, and that's what gets dialogue going, and I think that's great. I would just say, though, that my dad was in the military, as I know some folks in here were, like Mr. Carter and other folks. They fought for our rights to vote, and they're still fighting for our rights to vote. And there are people riding camels to go miles to vote. So my voting place is quite a distance from my home. Do I wish it was out my back door or closer to me? Oh, heck yes. But I take it as a privilege and an honor to vote. I don't look at it as something that should be convenient for me to get up and go do. It is something that people have fought, given their lives for, and we should be praising that. And yes, you do have the right to vote, and you can exercise that right, but do it like everybody else. Get out, go where you need to go, and cast that vote. Thank you.
Mr. Beckett.
Thank you. I find what Mr. James said to be absolutely not applicable to the present issue. We all can vote on Election Day, and there are voting precincts all over town. But instead, a few years ago, to the chagrin, I think, of county clerks everywhere, they came up with this concept of early voting. And early voting in our county has been tucked away here at Brookins in a very inconvenient place that those of us who are familiar with the community and who have other obligations on Election Day, come over here and vote. And for whatever reason, the legislature, I know some people think it's entirely political, maybe it is, decided that in locations where there were state four-year schools, well, we'd have another early voting location, or at least, as I argued with our county clerk, he could make our Champaign County early voting place the campus place. But the way this thing is sort of played out just sort of reminds me of the plot of a B-Western movie. This has been very, very predictable. There's absolutely no surprise to me whatsoever. In 1972, we had an election in which the students in the United States were energized. They did not like the incumbent in Washington, and they wanted the incumbent out. We actually had people marching on our campuses, carrying signs and being radicals and whatever. And I wasn't a radical, but I thought that our students should be allowed to vote right here in Champaign County where they went to school. And our county clerk, who happened to be of the party that I'm not, said no. He's not going to let students register to vote here in Champaign County. And so we had a legislator, a guy named Hirschfeld, who came over to the law school where I was going to school, and he pronounced that students were not going to be allowed to vote. If they wanted to vote, they could go back home and vote. And I got up at the event and debated him and said, you know what, the problem is that you act as if that the situation with students, we're only talking about these people. The difficulty is that the representative body is always here. Sure, students come and students go, but the fact is this body of students is always here, and they're entitled to vote on local legislative races. And I hear this stuff about how students don't pay taxes. That's a bunch of crud, too. We have so many students in apartments, and they pay so much rent, and those apartment owners pay the taxes, but the apartment owners are just writing the checks because the students have already given the money. So this stuff about students not paying taxes, that's a bunch of crud, too. And so I'll tell you what, as long as we have people like John Hirschfeld, and as long as we have people like Denny Bing, as long as we have people like Mark Sheldon, students are going to have a tough time voting on this campus. The only thing the students are asking for is the same opportunity to early vote as everybody else in this county. And they want an opportunity to vote in a place that's close to them, just as I want an opportunity to vote for early voting in a place that's close to me. Maybe we ought to eliminate early voting altogether. I think we've been such a poor country in turning out the vote. Early voting really is a good idea. Other states do other things, but this has been our solution to it, is to try to get early voting out. And so I support the students. I support the students that were here tonight, all of them. I support the students on campus who have called for the union. The union is the logical place for it, but I'll be damned if our county clerk will ever agree with that.
Ms. Michaels.
I don't see it as whether we're allowing somebody to vote or not. I think everybody has that right. They exercise that privilege on their own. I think what it is about is where it is. And quite honestly, to me, it's closer to the residence halls than it is to the union. And if my son can drive from ISU for 2 years to come home to vote, then I think they can walk down the block.
Let's go with Mr. Betts.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We in District 8, myself and Mr. Smucker, approximately 65% of our constituents are students. And I appreciate the opportunity to represent those students over the past 14 years. Some things were said this evening. Mr. Beckett touched on them, but I would be remiss not to mention them as well when they talk about students as not being property taxpayers, not that they somehow aren't the same as everyone else. 3 out of 5 people, according to the United States Census, in Champaign-Urbana do not own property. They are renters. That is students, non-students. I have represented renters for at least 23 years. Everyone who rents, and that's the vast majority of people in both these towns and the vast majority of students, pay property taxes through the rent. But more importantly, the sales tax, which is over 8%. In fact, every election, people, when we have a sales tax on the ballot, they say, well, the students are going to pay it. Well, they are, and they do. They have a lot of buying power on all sorts of items. They are part of this community, this idea that there's us versus them, the people who own property versus the people who don't own property. It is so exhausting. One's constitutional right to vote does not depend on whether you own property or not. It doesn't depend on whether you pay sales taxes or not. It only depends on, are you a registered voter, 18 years old, and a United States citizen? And you can use that vote however you like. In terms of this actual voting rights proposal, I don't think it would have ever been necessary to have adopted an early voting system on campuses in this state, and it, quite frankly, was particularly the U of I, if we had had 30 years of good behavior on the part of election officials in Champaign County. There's no question that's why this was created. It isn't because there were problems at Northern or Eastern or Western or Southern. It was because there were problems here. I have colleagues all over the country in the Big Ten and elsewhere. They never have to deal with this issue. No one is challenging students' voting rights in other schools. It is something that is quite particular and peculiar with this county. It's sad that it had to come to a point where we had to have a special system, but that's how bad it got. I have watched in various elections going back to 1992 when students had to stand in line for 3 hours at polling places in my district because the county clerk didn't properly staff the places. I have seen students challenged for the most ridiculous things at polling places, that if you challenged a voter in a rural area for that same thing, you'd likely probably get punched. You really would, because students are expected to come in with a lease, a voter registration card, and their name in the phone book, and they get challenged at the polling places on campus. This happens in every election. That's why we have this going on right now, is because of this long and ridiculous history. I would have urged Mark Sheldon, and did urge him, turn this lemon into lemonade. You don't like the law? Well, you've got the law. Now take credit for it. Become the drum major for voting rights and student voting. Is it going to kill anyone to go to Gregory Place? No. It's in my district. I'm happy to have people in my district go there. The Illini Union is also in my district. But I do think the intent of this law was to have the polling place be in a high-traffic area. There's no place that serves more students and more in the community than the Illini Union. You have thousands of faculty members, staff members, students, and community members who have no affiliation with the university who use the Illini Union all the time. All of the arguments I've heard against the union, the politics, well, there's politics all over. The question is it within 100 feet? I have been there way over 2 decades, and I have, on the first floor, the political organizations are not on the first floor. College Democrats, college Republicans, this organization, that they're not on the first floor. We have some vending of orange juice and ice cream and what have you, but that's not where the politics are. It's on the second floor, and it's way beyond 100 feet. Can you control the politics? Yep, you can control the politics just like you do at any other polling place. It's 100 feet. Someone challenges a person if they're violating the law. It happens. I know that Mr. Sheldon has already selected the location. He's exercised that prerogative. I think it was not judgment that was in compliance with the spirit and intent of this law, and I'm very sad for that because it was not necessary to have this ridiculous fight.
Mr. James?
Well, some of what you say holds merit, but I look at it, there's a lot of people I know that are senior citizens living in assisted housing and what have you, and if this bill was written for such that it helped everybody and we could tack something on there to alleviate some of their stress, that would be wonderful. But it does look like we're catering or looking toward helping a certain group of individuals. And then I heard the comment about tax. Well, I think Al and I can both say, we hear it all the time, that we own rental property, and gee, your people are voting on this issue and all they do is pay rent. Well, no, that's not all they do. They do participate. And I just want to be on the record with the students. When the 1% school tax came up here, and Tom, spoke out on it and what have you, and I agreed, the main person that was going to get hit was going to be the students. But everybody wanted that money because they felt like the students should pay their fair share to our community. Well, I voted against it because I thought enough is enough. But there's some issues that really need to be looked at, and I want it fair across the board, and that's what I was doing when that vote was cast also, because I was looking at my constituents. But all this rhetoric, the bottom line with me is, and I'm going to say it again, a vote is something that I treasure. And if I got to go to Paxton, Illinois to vote, I'm going to go, and I'm going to get there the best way I can. I wish you all the luck, but I'm tired of everybody being babied and wanting conveniences. Life, I think my first grade teacher told me this, and she's gone, or she'd be thrilled to death I'm saying this, life is not easy.
Ms. Anderson?
I have a couple other comments, but I just can't imagine, Mr. James, that you didn't mention that we're going to spend $800 for Gregory Place when we could have gotten the Illini Union free, because the university was going to provide that space. But one of the other comments that our clerk mentioned in picking Gregory Place was that it wasn't just to accommodate students, but it was to accommodate the rest of the community. I've lived in this community for 50 years. I'm not down on campus a lot, but I have gone through campus. But in talking to people that have lived in the community for a long time, they wonder, where is Gregory Place? But I don't think there is anyone in town that doesn't know where the Illini Union is. And if you want to do early voting, there are buses that go there that might be more convenient than coming out to Brookings. But I've always wondered, too, about the attitude of students. When I first came to this community in the late 50s, my husband was a student at the University of Illinois, and you felt this town pull, student pull. But I've always believed in voting, and I don't think I've ever missed an election. But I remember that I was not going to vote when we lived in Stadium Terrace. It was on a school referendum because I thought I would be leaving the community. But an advisor convinced us that we ought to vote. We ought to be caring about schools and hoping that people in the communities where we moved to would care about schools, so that when we had children, there would be adequate facilities. And that seemed convincing to me, so we both went and voted for the referendum that created Bottenfield School. Little did I know that we were going to stay in the community all of these years, and the school that my children went to was Bottenfield School. So I think there are a number of students who do end up staying in this community, and yet I've had friends who were not university people who live next to me who have moved on to other communities. So it's the rest of the community that comes in and out of our community as well. And I think the main thing is that it's everybody's right in this country to have voting privileges, and we should be protecting them no matter what they are. And making it easy for them.
Mr. J.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Now that you folks that have a problem with Mr. Shelton has taken your swipes at him, I've got 40 years of experience in voting in Champaign County, and I can tell you that Mark Shelton overall does an outstanding job. Does he do everything perfectly? No. There's very few in there that does anything perfectly except Mr. James over here. But I'm here to tell you that voting is a privilege. I do think that we're making special exceptions. Mark Shelton is not the cause of what early voting. That's ludicrous, and it's absurd. He needs to be given credit for the things he does, and he does right. And I'm telling you, he does an outstanding job with the elections in Champaign County overall.
Mr. Richards?
Let me just add that the location of the student voting pilot project and whether it's convenient for the community is a red herring. The clerk's office has had the ability for at least 4 years to set up early voting locations outside of the legally mandated one in the county clerk's office. Numerous jurisdictions across the state does so. And there's never been any interest in doing so until this student voting pilot project was mandated. Suddenly what's important is it convenient for the people of the community? 4 years ago, I challenged the clerk to put early voting locations in Rantoul, in Mahomet, in St. Joe, in addition to satellite locations in Champaign-Urbana, because early voting is a lot harder if you live in Rantoul than going to Brookings if you live in Champaign-Urbana. There's been no interest in that until now.
Mr. Nudo, do you have a comment?
Yes, thank you. This is Part B of a master plan for voting to get a certain type of voter to the voting booths. And Mr. Beckett and I had this conversation, and I feel very strongly about this. Frericks, it's very fitting that Frericks is the chair of the Agriculture Committee at the state level because he's harvesting votes. That's what he's doing here. And there's no question as to what the reason for the student pilot program was for. Now, Part B of that's Part A. Part B is to make sure we have a place where buttonholing and electioneering is highly probable. And I totally disagree with Mr. Betts's proviso that it can be stopped. That place is too hard, too big, and this is going to happen. Mr. Sheldon took the right approach. You know, I attended bar at 4 years at CAMS. You know what? Everybody found the place. Everybody found the place. And you know what? Gregory, as I think Diane said, is closer to campus living quarters than it is to the Union where people are moving in and out. Does anybody care about the Pisodum couple that has to come to Brookings? How much time and effort it takes to do that? Now, does that same couple have that same opportunity going to the Union with the parking, the way it is? This gentleman back here, I don't know. I've lived here for a number of years, well over 30 years. I went to school there 4 years, graduated. I have never seen convenient parking at the Union, ever, ever. So if that Pisodum couple who, you know, Mr. Richards wants to have franchise with early voting, was that the best location? Absolutely not. This is Part B of nothing more than harvesting votes. Thank you.
Mr. Kurtz.
Well, if it's harvesting votes, then Republican college organizations, Democratic organizations, independent organizations, faculty, the Senate, the University of Illinois, who are we talking about? Are we harvesting nonpartisan? Are we harvesting partisan? I'm not sure. If everyone gets to vote and all of the student bodies and all of the student organizations are for this, who are we talking about? I don't get it, because if all of these organizations, including the university included, want to have it at the Union, I'm assuming they all want to vote there. So I think that explanation doesn't hold water.
Mr. Knott?
I'd just like to call the question. I think our discussion is, well, many things, but it's degrading. I mean, or it's devolving is what I mean. So I'd like to just call the question.
Let's, Mr. Carter hasn't had a chance, let's let him speak, and then we can have a vote. Or Mr. Gladney, too?
Okay.
Everybody should have at least one chance to comment. Mr. Carter?
Yeah, I'm not directing my comment at any person other than the people died to get a right to vote. These are our babies we're talking about. How much money we throwing in Iraq over there in them places to get new schools, and now the kids have to go home when it get too hot. What's wrong? Man, come on, what's wrong with us? We are losing our mind. These are our babies, and if we can do anything to make it better or easier for them to cast a vote, let's do it.
Hey, Mr. Gladney?
Okay. The actual location of the polling of the early voting spot, that's important to me. I think it should be preferably at the Union. But the actual physical location, whether it's at the Union or Gregory Place, especially given the current circumstances and everything, that is not weighing as heavily on me. Although I do appreciate Ms. Anderson bringing up how we could have tried to work with the university and had it for free at the Union. But that having been said, just having an early voting station on campus to me does not seem discriminatory. It does not seem like a bad idea. I think if you were to say, hey, we have a concentration of 40,000 people in this particular area that, a lot of them live in this area and do their business in this area. 40,000 of them. Now, not all of them may be registered to vote, or not all of them may be registered to vote here, but I bet you a lot of them are. And you have them, plus you have all of the people here to support them, the academic professionals, faculty, staff, which adds multiple more thousands of people. And they're all concentrated in this area 5 days a week. Would it make sense to maybe have an early voting spot there? I don't understand why someone would say, no, not at all. There could be this other place out here, and what about this place out here? Now, I do care about everyone in the county and their ability to vote, but you have to also look at population centers. That's not something that to me is political, one way or the other. To me, it just is some common sense. And there's been talk tonight of students. And I've lived here for almost all my life, which is just about 19 or 20 years. And the topic of students and townies versus the students, I've never understood it. I've never understood this us versus them. If the university went away or never was here, I think that'd be very bad. I think that we're an agricultural county, but we are also an academic county. And just by their very presence, I don't care about, doing calculations about rent that they pay, and then that goes to landlords, and that goes to property taxes or sales taxes. Put all that aside. Their very presence here is an engine that helps run this county. So I think we should thank them for being here, and thank them for helping make this county what it is, and stop trying to make it an us versus them scenario. That's all I have to say.
All right, well, we have a vote here. I think we probably want to have a roll call. All right, roll call, please.
What we voting on? The resolution. Okay, 7506.
Schrader?
No.
Smucker?
Yes.
Wysocki?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Beckett?
Yes.
Betts?
Yes.
Carter?
Yes.
Cowart?
Yes.
Dennitz? Gladney?
Yes.
James?
Strong no.
Jay?
Stronger no.
Jones?
No.
Knott?
No.
Kurtz?
Yes.
McGinty?
Yes.
Michaels?
No.
Mosier?
No.
Nudo?
No.
O'Connor?
No.
Richards?
Yes.
Rosales?
Yes.
Sapp? Weibel?
Yes, despite the strong no's, motion carries.
That holds a little extra weight.
Mr. Chairman, there's nothing further from policy of relevance.
I can tell you're happy about that. Okay, Ms. Cowart? Right. Would you be willing to do items A, B, and C under other business at the same time? I think we have an omnibus, do all these. Please proceed with those.
Okay, we're asking the county board to adopt resolution number 7502, requesting consent of the Department of Transportation to reappoint Jeff Blue as county clerk. Also, resolution number 7503, appointing Jeff Blue as county engineer of Champaign County, Illinois. And resolution number 7504 of agreement for county clerks, county engineers, county engineers salary, and that's a move.
Second by Mr. Jones. Discussion on any of these three items. Mr. Carter.
Yeah. I just want some clarification. Did we hire Mr. Blue under a contract?
We have to hire my contract. It's a.
Well, what do you mean, was it a limit contract?
It's a six.
I thought we hired him as our engineer.
We did, but the IDOT requires a 6-year contract. Department of Transportation.
Well, how did he get disconnected?
No, it's a new contract.
It's a new one.
It's a new one. It lasts 6 years, and we have to give him another one.
Well, what reappoint mean?
It's what IDOT wants us to do. We will do what IDOT asks us. We want IDOT money.
Reappoint mean?
Retain. He's going to be our engineer for another 6 years.
Well, that means to me you've been eliminated and you got to get hired back again.
No.
The first appointment ends October 11th this year. His first appointment ends on October 11th. You have to reappoint him for another 6-year term, starting October 12th.
Well, that's what I asked them. But was he under limits?
Yes, there is a statutory limit.
I can understand.
You can appoint a county engineer for 6 years at a time.
But if I get hired on the job and they tell me I'm hired and I do my job right, so why I have to be reassigned? I can.
Mr. James.
I'd like to make a motion to move item C off to itself.
You want to make that be an amendment? You want to make an amendment to remove item C?
Yes.
Okay, we have an amendment. Is there a second? Please. Second by Mr. O'Connor. Discussion on removing item C. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Aye. Motion fails. Back to the main motion, all three items together. Discussion. Mr. Kurtz.
I can only say that being on the Highway Committee and working with Mr. Blue.
Point of order?
What's that?
Point of order.
I can't
No,
discuss.
wait. Go ahead, Mr. Reagan.
Personnel matter?
No, I'm not going to make it a personnel matter. I'm just
I just
going
want
to
to make sure.
compliment.
That's a personnel matter. Discussing the merits and demerits of any employee.
Perhaps you could, I would rephrase it in how the department is doing.
He's pretty darn good department.
Thank you. Further discussion. Okay, roll call. It has to be a roll call.
Schrader? Yes. Smucker?
Yes.
Wysocki? Yes. Anderson? Yes. Beckett?
Yes.
Betts?
Yes.
Carter?
Yes.
Cowart?
Yes.
Dennitz? Gladney?
Yes.
James?
Yes.
Jay?
No.
Jones?
Yes.
Knott? Kurtz?
A strong yes.
McGinty?
Yes.
Michaels? Mosher?
Yeah.
Nudo?
Yes.
O'Connor?
Yes.
Richards?
Yes.
Rosales?
Yes.
Sapp?
Yes.
Weibel?
Yes, motion carries. Next item, semi-annual review of closed session minutes. Is there a motion?
Move they remain closed. Second.
Second by Mr. Beckett. Discussion. Mr. James?
You had alluded to at the last meeting that they were going to be reviewed and possibility of some of the older ones.
I would like to talk about coming up with some rules to deal with this. We'll be working on that.
So you're still working on it?
Yeah.
Okay. Can we get a rough estimate of how much time you need?
No.
Thank you.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Aye. Motion carries. If I could skip the item E and go to item F on the addendum.
Move approval.
Discussion, this would be adoption of resolution number 7505 in support of legislation to limit future pension liability.
Who was the second on that?
Mr. Knott, did you second it? Mr. Knott. Any discussion on this? All in favor? Aye. All opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, item E, closed session. Mr. Smucker.
I move we enter into executive session pursuant to 5 ILCS 122C2 to consider collective negotiation matters between Champaign County, its employees, and their representatives. Further move that the following individuals remain present: County Legal Counsel, County Administrator, Recording Secretary. Roll call.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Schrader?
Yes.
Smucker?
Yes.
Wysocki?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Beckett?
Yes.
Betts?
Yep. Yes.
Carter?
Yes.
Cowart? Dinitz? Gladney? James?
Yes.
Jay?
Yeah.
Jones?
No.
Knott?
Yes.
Kurtz? Michaels? Or McGinty?
Yes.
Michaels? Mosier? Nudo?
Yes.
O'Connor?
No.
Richards?
Yes.
Rosales?
Yes.
Sapp?
Yes.
Weibel?
Yes, motion carries. We're going into closed session.